Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to break down how Manchester United comfortably defeated Aston Villa to keep pace with Chelsea for that final Champions League spot in the Premier League. When we break it all down and we do look at the board, we have Aston Villa in a 4-2-3-1, but they spent large periods of that game out of possession, so they eventually did shift into two banks of four, with Grealish helping Samatta press from the front. When we look to Manchester United, they kept the same starting lineup that destroyed Bournemouth over the weekend. And what we can say is that when we look at how they were maneuvering across the pitch, you had Martial dropping ahead of the center backs, doing a good job of holding up the play and linking play with his teammates. Out in the wider areas, both Greenwood and Rashford were adopting more narrow positions ahead of the fullbacks. When we look to Rashford, he served as an additional passing outlet when he dropped off of Konsa into his own half in search of the ball. And then we ended up seeing Greenwood ahead of Taylor and also looking to drop in between that gap between Trezeguet and McGinn, or Trezeguet and Douglas Luiz, in search of the ball as well. And that created space for Wan-Bissaka to push forward down the right-hand side because of Trezeguet's narrow positioning. And then we look to Bruno Fernandes, who was drifting laterally between the lines. He was starved for service throughout that opening half, and that did see him drop off a bit deeper ahead of that Aston Villa bank to get on the ball. But there were also times where he made darting runs in between Mings and Taylor, and specifically in between El Ghazi and Konsa, or Konsa and Hawes, looking to combine with those United wide players to create overloads and get the fullbacks or Rashford in beyond that Aston Villa defense. Nevertheless, when we do look at Aston Villa's overall shape out of possession, what we ended up seeing was that they did drop off into two banks of four, and they ended up having Samatta and Grealish drop off of the center backs, and they were looking to once again box in Matic and Paul Pogba in that center of the pitch. The goal was to limit the service into Pogba and Matic, and they did do a very good job of that in the opening stages. And if they look to press the center backs, whether it be Grealish or Samatta, one would step to Maguire or Lindelof, and the other would drop off into the path of Pogba, and vice versa. When you look at Villa's shape, the midfield battle should have been set. It should have been Grealish on Matic, Douglas Luiz tracking the movement of Bruno Fernandes, and then McGinn stepping out into the path of Paul Pogba. Ultimately, that wasn't the case here, but this shift to two banks of four with Grealish and Samatta dropping off the center backs was successful in those earlier stages. The manner in which United have looked to overcome that over the past few games is to have Nemanja Matic drop off in between the center backs or shift to the left of Maguire. But even when he did do that, what Aston Villa ended up doing was that they had El Ghazi step forward to press Matic, and that was how they did look to stop Matic from dictating the tempo of the game or helping United build from those deeper positions. The other manner in which Villa looked to disrupt United was when United looked to build out from goal kicks. And what we ended up seeing was that they had Grealish and Samatta ahead of the center backs. They had El Ghazi and Trezeguet just ahead of the fullbacks. And then with Pogba and Matic dropping off a bit deeper, you ended up seeing McGinn sit in between them. So now what you end up seeing is that it is 2v1 in between McGinn, but Villa were able to cope with that. For instance, if the ball was shifted out to Maguire, then you would see El Ghazi close Luke Shaw, and that would end up seeing McGinn shift over to Matic, with Grealish dropping off a bit deeper to close down Paul Pogba. And the same thing would happen on the opposite flank, and it did put United into a nervy moment. And what we ended up seeing was that it was Pogba being closed down by McGinn. He dropped off the ball to Wan-Bissaka, who was closed by Trezeguet. And then when Wan-Bissaka wrapped the ball around Trezeguet, it was Greenwood dropping off of Taylor. But with that tight pressure, it forced Greenwood to play a loose pass in towards Pogba that McGinn was able to intercept. So as you could see, it was Villa's intent to ensure that United couldn't build from deeper positions, but United were able to find gaps to bypass that press. From the goal kicks, De Gea was just simply looking to loft balls into the path of Greenwood or Rashford dropping off. In the earlier stages, it wasn't working, but as that first half continued, you ended up seeing Greenwood drop off to eventually hold off Taylor, and that led to the penalty that Bruno Fernandes was awarded. And then later on, he was dropping balls off to Rashford, who was pulling off of Konsa. And even in the second half, he was able to find Bruno Fernandes shifting out into the wider areas to lob the ball over that Aston Villa press. press. Meanwhile, from open play, the issue that Villa encountered in disrupting United's build-up play was the fact that Samatta was holding a higher position, and that left Grealish on an island to try and close down Pogba and Matic, or even sometimes Bruno Fernandes dropping off a bit deeper to make it a 3v1. And even when you look to Matic dropping off deeper to create that three-man backline, once El Ghazi stopped stepping forward, then that also created an avenue for United to play their key players in attacking positions. So like I said, you had Matic and Pogba against Grealish on a few occasions. There was times where you had 3v1 with Bruno Fernandes and that United midfield. And there was just even times where you ended up seeing those 2v1s with Pogba and Matic that eventually led to Pogba diagonals out to Luke Shaw and to Marcus Rashford. So now that we've identified how United were able to get into Villa's third, now we assess how they were able to create chances. One avenue was through overlapping or underlapping runs from Luke Shaw. What we ended up seeing was that in the earlier stages, there was a time where Pogba was able to locate Rashford peeling off of Konsa. So he hit a diagonal ball out into that zone, and you end up seeing Luke Shaw making an underlapping run. Despite being tracked well by El Ghazi, his cross was closed down by Haas. That was a warning sign. But United created two quality chances following that, simply down that left-hand side, one stemming through good work from Martial, Bruno Fernandes, and Luke Shaw. And what ended up leading to was Shaw breaking in free, and then Bruno Fernandes making a late run in beyond Douglas Luiz, with Rashford's movement taking out the two center backs, but Bruno Fernandes nodded his effort over the net. And then even in the second half, you have Rashford and Shaw looking to exploit Konsa and El Ghazi. This time it was Rashford making the underlapping run towards the byline, clipping the ball over Taylor, but Wan-Bissaka nodded that effort wide from point-blank range. And then lastly, we look to Martial, who did a very good job of tracking deeper to win possession on two separate occasions that ended up leading to United transitional attacks. Initially, he was able to drop off deeper and dispossess McGinn, and that saw Pogba ignite a counter-attack that led to Martial going 1v1 with Konsa, but firing a tame effort on goal. And then when we look to the second goal, it's Martial from behind stepping into the path of Mings, dispossessing him, and then holding him off to play the ball around Douglas Luiz to ignite that counter-attack. What can also be said is that in the build-up to United's better chances in that opening half, it involved Greenwood receiving the ball in a pocket of space, but you also saw Tyrrell Mings not looking to step into his path and then freely allow Greenwood to dribble towards the box before firing shots on goal. Ultimately, the only real threat that United encountered around their box in that game was down the right-hand side through Konsa's crossing from the touchline. Neither Greenwood nor Rashford did a good job of marking him tightly and ensuring that he couldn't deliver those crosses into the box. And in different sequences, we ended up seeing Samatta looking to occupy Lindelof, and what you ended up seeing from Wan-Bissaka was that he was occupied by Trezeguet, and on two separate occasions we saw Douglas Luiz break in behind, we saw Grealish waste an opportunity, and then the final opportunity ended up seeing Trezeguet peeling off his shoulder, but Wan-Bissaka did a very good job of getting ahead on it to ensure that he couldn't get a shot on target. But as you can see, this was pretty straightforward for United here. Once they were able to bypass Villa's pressing from the front on a consistent basis, Pogba, Matic, and Bruno Fernandes were able to dominate that midfield zone, and then they were able to find various routes to goal, whether it be wide combinations down the left-hand side, the fact that Tyrone Mings and the Villa defense were backing off Greenwood when he received that ball in and around that box, and Martial's work rate to drop into his own half to win possession and launch United counterattacks. And that was how United were able to comfortably win this game and keep pace with Chelsea for that final Champions League spot. Hi everybody, thanks for watching, and subscribe here for your latest tactical analysis and daily commentary on the InnerViews show. And if that wasn't enough, don't forget you could find more organic, unfiltered soccer/football analysis on the InnerViews podcast, the best soccer/football podcast in the world, available on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and any Android apps on your Android devices.